Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Product Coalition podcast. This is the third in the Sydney-based series of product management podcasts. I'm joined today by Anthony Murphy. Welcome.
Yeah, well,
Great to have you here.
Yeah.
It's going to be good. Today we're going to be chatting about ethics in product, which is going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to that. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to Brainmates, who's the Sydney location sponsor for Product Coalition for this podcast series. Brainmates is a product management training and consulting team in Australia, New Zealand and Denver, USA. Find out more about the Brainmates 3-day course for product folks on the 9th of December in Denver at www.brainmates.com.au. If you just discovered the Product Coalition, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're a global product management community that started out as a publication called productcoalition.com. Product Coalition has since grown to 5,000 product managers over on Slack, and you can grab an invite at productcoalition.com if you want to join us on Slack. If you want to watch this podcast, visit YouTube and search for Product Coalition and give us a follow there. And we're 100% funded by community support. So if you'd like to support the podcast, the publication or the Slack community, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/productco. Anthony, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Great to have you here. I'm really enjoying chatting to Sydney people. It's weird. It is a different vibe chatting to Sydney people to Melbourne people, and it's all product management. No, it's really good. We're going to be chatting today around ethics in product. I love this is a completely different angle. So going to get stuck into that. But before we do, much like the Melbourne series, Sydney series, I've gone pub quiz for the questions. So are you, out of interest, you born and bred Sydney?
Yeah. I like Blue Mountains, so like west of Sydney.
Right, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, this is going to be a good test of your local knowledge then. Although looking at the question, you got some easier ones, I must say, I think, than some of the other guests. But we'll see how we go. Okay. And this is all on the assumption that my internet source is telling truth. So, top 6 languages spoken in Sydney.
Wow. Top 6. English has got to be one of them, right?
Yep. Ding.
I'm going to go Cantonese as another one.
Yep.
Yeah. Indian?
No.
What else is there?
Hindi. No.
Hindi. Yeah. There's a lot of French people.
Not enough to make the top 6.
I'm just making random
Italian, so close,
now.
but also
Spanish.
No,
when you say close, I was like, it's got to be around there, right?
Well, European, there's another European country in it. All right, I'll let you off. Okay, so I don't know if they're in this order, but English, Arabic, Cantonese, Mandarin, Greek.
Oh, that's the one. A little further
and
south,
Vietnamese. There we go. Okay, staying on the international theme. Longest line of pizzas record in the world was created here in Australia. Firstly, can you guess the suburb that happened in? Pizzas. Italy. Leichhardt.
Leichhardt?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I was thinking around the, I was like east or south, somewhere around there.
Okay, now is the stab in the dark one for you. Number of meters long this longest line of pizzas in the world was.
Were these like individual pizzas or like one pizza?
Nah, individual.
Yeah. Line of pizzas.
Well, there might have been like them meter long ones.
Yeah. And then just been easy to measure. I'm going to complete stab in the dark.
Right, yeah,
I'm going to just go like, 400 meters.
Not bad. 221.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I thought this would be a little bit topical, and I'm not sure if it's accurate, but most played sport in Sydney.
Most played. Rugby comes to mind.
But which format?
Yeah, so it would be rugby league.
No. Cricket, apparently.
Cricket.
Yeah.
Sydney.
I don't know if that includes like grassroots and...
See, I would have expected cricket to be more of a Melbourne.
Yeah. No, I agree. Caught me off. I wasn't expecting cricket.
Yeah,
to get to know you a bit more personally, favourite spot by the water in Sydney?
Favourite spot by the water? Oh, it's got to be the Rocks down in Sydney. So near Circular Quay, across the side. Just because don't feel like you're in the city anymore. Awesome pubs down there as well.
Favourite pub?
Favourite pub? Oh, there's a few good pubs. Lord Nelson in the Rocks is great. The Glenmore Hotel in the Rocks has got the best rooftop.
So that's for the rooftop.
Yeah, excellent rooftop. Yeah.
Nice. For anyone
Between those
listening
two.
outside of Sydney around the world, definitely recommend get down there.
Especially on a sunny day like today.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, and favourite meetup or conference in Sydney?
I'm going to be a little biased and say leading the product because I spoke there to you last week as conference. Meetup, product take is always good here.
Yep.
Yeah. These guys put on product talks as well, which is really good.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, let's get stuck into it. Ethics in product. Can I first, let's get this going. Tell me why this was a meaningful topic for you to chat about today.
Yeah, that's a good question. To me, this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I really got into this probably a couple of years ago. I worked with a designer, worked with some brilliant designers in the past, and he got me on to a lot of things like humane-centered design. So there's a whole institute for that. You can go to Humane Tech. I think it's humanetech.com or something like that. And around the whole philosophy that, especially in design, especially in product, right? The products that we build, especially today, have a huge impact in our lives. I mean, we've got mobile phones in our pockets. We're on the internet. It's proliferated. It's infiltrated our lives. So therefore, the products that we build can have a radical impact on us. And then us as those who are the crafters and the people who build that, we have a huge responsibility, and we start to shift towards being more of a responsibility class, that we bear this responsibility to do things in the right way. And I remember he framed it really well. He said, the way we do our products, we obviously, a lot of it's around behavioral science and behavior economics and all that. And we can either exploit human vulnerabilities in order to basically make our product sticky and to, make a profit and all that. Or we could try and use them for the best and try and amplify human good. And that, just to me, really spoke to my heart. And I think the more and more products become really infiltrated and really part of our lives. I mean, you got people with, Alexas, Google Homes. I mean, they're all we're starting to move towards being a completely connected house, right?
Yep.
And then suddenly the products that you build have a huge impact. And it's either we can, technology's climbing, and are we dehumanizing, going down, or are we kind of going together and letting technology amplify us? And definitely for us who are crafters of product and have a say in that. Yeah, it's a huge responsibility for us, and it's important, I think. Yeah.
It was great to be talking about it. You're absolutely right. Can I ask, Anthony, what's been your path? What was your path to product?
Oh, my path is it's funny because I don't think anybody has a typical path in the product. It's one of those things that we all kind of come from different backgrounds, and I think that's great. It makes it really diverse. So I started out of uni. I was an engineer, wrote some code, did some Java and all that. I decided to go completely left field out of that. I joined the military.
Right.
I went to the Royal Military College down in Canberra, trained to be a leader. And when I think about my product journey, I think there's two kind of probably key moments for me. One of them was in uni. I did business and IT, and I had to do a marketing subject, and I dreaded it. That's the business side. I was like, marketing spawn of the earth, try and convince us to buy things that we don't need. And then I got into it and then got really into behavioral economics. And I think me personally, I got a bit of a passion around psychology and understanding how we kind of work. So I got really interested, and then I ended up doing heaps of marketing subjects after that, and consumer behavior subjects and all that. And then the second defining moment was probably in the military. And I came out of the military, I got a role as a BA, and I was a product owner. I worked in a Scrum team. But even then, I don't think that was really, I think I was still kind of trying to get to the grips of it. Kind of got into Scrum Mastering, went down the Agile path. But then I started to, I've been fortunate. I've always kind of worked on digital consumer and kind of products, and worked with heaps of designers, and started to just naturally gravitate towards that side of the fence, get really into the discovery side of the world. And that's when I really started going deep into product. And then ever since then, pretty much haven't looked back.
Right, great.
Yeah.
Before we jump into this topic, I'm keen to know from that military experience, what still stands true to you today from that as such a significant early part of the context that has formed you into a product manager? Yeah,
heaps. I mean, it's funny. People always find this as a very interesting topic. I find it as an interesting topic. The way, at least this was my perspective of how I learned, how I interpreted my learning, I should say. leadership in the military it's different to how I think it's changed a lot. People still think really hierarchy, command and control, tell everybody what to do. It's not so much like that. More so as a leader in the military, and I shouldn't say leader because everyone's a leader in the military, and that's one of the really good things about it, at least in the Australian Army, to try and promote that. You're an appointment of a commander. So your role is more about creating the conditions for your platoon, your team, think of it that way, to succeed, not to tell them what to do because they're the experts. So it's a very similar relationship between, say, a product manager and the product team. They're the experts. You're not trying to dictate how to do the work, but what you're doing is you're giving them the tools to succeed. And you do that via, the roadmap, by giving vision, by giving them an end state, a goal, an OKR to kind of strive towards, and then helping with culture, helping with, stakeholder management and all that. And you're more behind the scenes, doing wheeling and dealing so they can just get on with the job. Right. And it's much more about providing the conditions and then giving them autonomy to succeed. And then that's kind of really rung true, and it just kind of continues. So I like to say I kind of, in a way, learnt product from the military. Yeah,
that's a fascinating analogy. Yeah. Can I ask, is there standout experiences that you had in the military that you pull back upon as you're working in desk side now as a civilian? Yeah,
I think a few. Some of the defining stuff for me is one around the concept of commander's intent, which is really about how do I paint a picture of the end state, give them a goal, and then enable the autonomy to achieve that. And how you paint that end state is very specific. It's got to be vivid. It's got to be kind of attainable. It's got to be, they should be able to see it. It should be clearly articulated. It should be concise. And you think about your vision statements, and you think about even goals and objectives. They should, all those things start to ring true. So I think I draw upon that a lot, as well as it being more the what as opposed to the how.
Right.
And not even that, more like that's what the end state is. It's not even so much the what, more of the why, if that makes sense. The other things I kind of draw upon a lot is more on, maybe there's three things. One of them is around communication. You start to realize that communication is paramount. You need to talk to the team, you need to talk to stakeholders, and often people, especially in the civilian world, they say, "Oh, but I said it. Why didn't they hear me? Why didn't they understand it?" I've said it 5 times now, and they get frustrated about it. But part of it, that's the role, right? Is you're kind of like, you're the glue that binds everything together. So in order to achieve that, you need to communicate a lot. You need to continuously remind them, why are they here? Why are we doing these things? I draw upon that. And the third one that I was thinking of was around more just the kind of leadership practices around how do I build rapport with somebody? How do I build respect and all that?
Right,
There's a few little tricks of the trade that kind of pull through there.
I can also, and forgive me for running with assumptions here, I can also assume that in the environment of the military, in either an exercise or in the heat of battle, as an individual and as a leader, there's so many variables outside of your control.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wind, rain, weather conditions, the enemy, the game you're trying to win, essentially. Is some of that sort of conditioning of that you're going to get unexpected things come left field helped you along the way as well?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely builds resilience and just makes you understand that uncertainty. We talk in the military, when you learn warfare theory, such a thing, you learn about like the enduring features of war, and one of them is essentially uncertainty or chance. Right. And sometimes people put in the phrase of the enemy gets a vote, but also the weather gets a vote, the terrain gets a vote. You're always going to get the unexpected, and just to be able to accept that and also learn how to deal with it. And I think that's where autonomy and not dictating and painting a clear picture of the end state kind of comes into it, because you're inevitably going to run into hurdles. But the more you allow the people who are the closest to the information to make a decision and get around that hurdle, that's how you that's how you succeed. That's how you get to the goal. Not one person in a tent, which, was once upon a time, like World War I and stuff. You think about that. One person in a tent making all the decisions, or people on the front line being like, this is ridiculous. Why would we do that? Yeah. So, yeah. We've learned from mistakes, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, in that instance, very expensive mistakes.
Yes.
Okay, let's jump into the topic. This is awesome. Thank you. Ethics and look, I suppose let's go really high first.
Yeah.
Why is it important in product, and how do you see it generally shaping product landscape as it is today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I talked a little bit about some of it too, and I guess just to tie the two topics together a bit as well. Ethical decision making and ethics and leadership is kind of a lot of that I learned in the military too. They teach you the difference between ethics and morals and how to make ethics.
Do you mind just explaining that?
Yeah, sure.
I'll tell you what, a couple of months ago, I was looking at a decision framework, and I needed to make sure that decisions were both ethical, moral, and legal.
Yeah.
And I really, we use these words quite freely and easily, but I did have to Google a pure definition. Do you want to just talk for the audience through that?
So ethical is usually a guideline. So ethical decision making is you are abiding by, let's say in a military context, it's like the Geneva Convention or the rules of engagement. From a product point of view, your ethical decisions is, am I going to get sued for this? Like, is it lawful, right? If you're working in a regulatory environment, is it, am I adhering to those regulator requirements, as well as what's, things like freedom of speech, and am I still adhering to the ethical guidelines that are actually set by government bodies and all that? Moral decision making is your own personal compass, right? So that's you. Nobody can tell you whether it's moral or not. People can tell you whether it's ethical or not because that's what you go to court for, but they can't. Moral is your own compass. So then this is where in the military, we talk about the 60-minute test. So 60 Minutes is a current affair program in Australia, for those who don't know. And basically it's like, well, how would this look? How would your decision look on the front page or headline 60 Minutes?
And to give some context, it's like a sort of almost, I wouldn't say paparazzi, but they're taking the extremes of a situation and glamorizing it as much as possible for viewership.
Yes, definitely, yeah. And then you got some probably more more relatable ones for people outside of Australia. Like you got the grandma test.
Right.
How would you be proud to tell your grandma about this?
Right.
Would it make it past her moral compass? So that's kind of like the difference. Yeah. For sure.
And within the world of product management, where are you seeing that have impact?
Yeah, so, I was talked about before how, products are kind of proliferated into our lives, or it's having this huge impact. You see it already on the news, Instagram at the moment, or Facebook, I should say, is trialing hiding likes with, started in Australia. They're starting to scale that, but that's in response to obviously a whole bunch of, welfare for teenagers in particular. Not saying that it's only contained in them, but, So you can see it's starting to have an impact. I know I see it myself. I'm like, am I always checking my phone? Why am I pulling my phone out? I didn't do anything with it. I just looked at the time and I unlocked it. But that's already an addiction and a habit. So it infiltrates our lives. And the more and more that gets to the stage where it's not just our phones, it starts to become our homes. It becomes our cars. It becomes how we use all that. Then it has a real impact. There's a real causation between those products and how we use them and the impact on people's lives. Yeah.
I recently read that, and I believe it was Australian households, that it's in total number of, in the average Australian household is 13 devices connected to the internet. And so I actually sat down.
Yeah, I'm counting mine now.
Let's do a bit of data analysis on myself. And I was about 13 or 14. Yeah. It was very surprising.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I was close to that number as well. Yeah.
And obviously the devices, the privacy that we give these devices it feels like is opening up more and more, particularly with the smart assistants or the home assistants listening and obviously over here in Australia you can now do the phone calls through the smart assistant through Google Home, etc. So for you, where are you seeing the lines start to cross, I suppose, with regards to ethics?
Yeah, so it's really hard to give a direct answer to that, but I guess on a whole, we are, because these things are infiltrating our lives, we're starting to just become more savvy around it, right? And we're starting to move into a class of people where, we're becoming more sensitive about privacy. We start to ask the questions, hey, is that recording me in the background?
Yep.
Why is it? Why should it? And not to say that that's crossing a line. I think that's one for either some legal body to decide. But I also just think it's also down to the individual. Some people are more forgiving. They're like, oh, I'm completely okay with it. I don't care. And other people, they see that as a crossing the line, right? They're like, that's too far. So, but I think those ones are probably an interesting one. I think listening in, you see that for sure. The other ones that I think are just really, not really maybe concerning, but you see gamification's been around for a long time, right? And the ability, that's a perfect example of exploiting human vulnerability, right? We get a dopamine hit, we want more of it, and we kind of come back for more. And people in the gambling industry has been applying this for decades, if not centuries, and it's starting to make its way into it was contained at one point in time because it was either on your console or it was on your computer. So you were confined to a certain space and a certain time that you could use it. Now that it's infiltrated its way into our iPads, our mobile phones, we're no longer confined to those things. So then these addictions become, I guess the impact is greater. Not to say it's any worse than before, but the impact is greater. So then therefore you've got to start to consider, that impact. Yeah.
Consumes more hours of our day. It certainly has greater bandwidth than ever before. In fact, I think this morning I was reading about Spotify have released a kids-specific version app of Spotify today.
Yeah.
So something like that where we start to then look at the age and the impact of a product at certain ages. Let's talk through that. Spotify have built a specific app just for children.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Hey, there's you see that going around. I remember there's a bank that in the UK, I remember seeing it. We had a few chats because, I work with some people that in the banking, and the app was basically a banking app for kids, and it was to help them to understand smart money management and all that, which in a way, ethically moral point of view as well, that's not bad. You want to help them educate them about money, so then later on they're greater equipped to handle that. But then at the same time, it's like, well, you giving a bank account to a kid, depending on the age. Obviously there's some ethical things around that. Around certain ages, they can't go too low. Can't give it to a 2-year-old, for example. But there's also another side of that, which is customer lifetime value. If I can get them in young, then great, awesome customer lifetime value. They're going to continue to use our products. They're going to get home loan. They're going to get credit cards, everything when they come to age. So on one hand, sure, there's this great thing, help them get money smart, but on the other hand, it's like, well, are we exploiting kids in order to increase, because it's a great customer lifetime value if we can get them in young early, especially if, and also getting their parents in, because that's one of the reasons why the parents might join that bank is like, oh cool, I can do this thing for my kid. So then it's like, well, what is the main driver behind that product? Is it to actually better help kids? Well, you could probably do that by not actually giving them a physical bank account, or is it that you're trying to get them in young so then you can then have that customer lifetime? And that's where that moral thing kind of comes in, right?
Definitely. And for those listening around the world, this particular instance of banking is a great one because we've had a Royal Commission here in Australia that is exposed exactly this type of practice, that one of what we call our big four banks in Australia for decades was going into schools and incentivizing schools to introduce their banking program for children. The schools got commissions out of it, from what I remember. If you Google the Barefoot Investor, he certainly sort of has brought this to the surface and continues daily to sort of share what's happened in that industry. And the outcome was that savings accounts were introduced to 7-year-olds and credit cards without any form of request were turning up in the post as that 7-year-old became a 17-year-old, and all of a sudden they had basically free money. I remember what a credit card meant to me at 17 years old.
I feel like all the people that I went to school with, as soon as they hit 18, if somebody didn't max out a credit card, they were probably like an anomaly. Well,
they're probably one of those sort of 35, 40-year-olds who are now retired. Incredibly sensible.
Doing better than the rest of us.
So I think that you touched on a point there, which is what's the metric? Why? And I suppose then it's easy to create a metric without considering the ethical impact that metric may have, such as time on site or time in app or those types of things. Can you talk about how do you think about that as a product manager day to day? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I think, typically I come back to that grammar or 60-minute test too, right? So is the thing that we're chasing, that objective, that metric or whatnot, would I be proud to go to my grandma and say, hey, look, I'll definitely be proud to go to her and tell her that, look, we're helping all these kids be, money smart, and they're gonna be better for it, more financially savvy and everything. But if you come down and said, I just made the bank $2 billion because we got all these kids in when they were really young, that's probably not going to pass the test. The other part of it too is sometimes things are unintended. Like, think about this. I'll make an assumption on this too, because I don't know Mark Zuckerberg, but I'm assuming that when he created Facebook, he never intended it to, you think about the Cambridge Analytica thing around swaying the election and stuff. I don't think he ever intended for that to happen. Never intended for people to steal other people's IDs through it. Never expected all those things. And sometimes it happens. But again, I think the bit that shifts, and especially as a product manager, and this is maybe tying back to too with some of the leadership stuff I learned in the military, is even if it's unintended, you got to assume responsibility for it, and you got to do something about it. And it may suck and it may be detrimental to you, but that comes with the job.
Yeah, right.
And that's how the job is changing, and the climate is changing that way, and we need to accept that. So sometimes you're going to pick a metric and it's going to have unintended consequence. And I guess the key there is to try and pick up that unintended consequence. If it's a negative one, sometimes it's a good one, and that's fine. Early enough, and actually, take responsibility over it and actually try and rectify it. I think that's the key part. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good point. For me, what's running through my mind here is product managing a product. You've got quite a lot of control, but for the Facebook example, product managing an ecosystem, especially the breadth and depth of Facebook, so much outside of your control. One of the things with ethics specifically, and we touched on how they're set and created and agreed to, either locally, nationally, or internationally. If I think about someone like Uber, entered Australia, lots of blockades by taxis, and people boycotting, people trying to surface them up as going beyond ethics and into breaking the law. But Uber still entered the country, and it could be argued that the ethics just weren't up to date with technology. What's your thoughts on ethics and keeping them up to date so that humanity does still get the best out of the technology that's available to us? When I think about the positive social benefit that Uber may have introduced to people using Uber, I appreciate if you're a taxi driver in Australia, you wouldn't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah. That's it's definitely an important question too. Unfortunately, a lot of times with these types of things, they tend to be after the fact. We try and be as proactive as possible, but laws just naturally, by nature, have to follow suit. It's only until something happens that we actually manage to get people to sit down and have a conversation about it and actually amend the laws. I think as long as a whatever body, a government body and stuff, and as a society, as long as we're actually sitting down and reviewing them and changing them, I like to hope we're okay. And we still maintain to get the benefits out of it. But to be able to proactively be like, somebody's going to do collaborative consumption around ride sharing, and that's going to come into our country in like the next 2 years. Like you can't predict that, and that's just the nature of the beast.
I'm just wondering, maybe regulatory or legal bodies need more product managers.
Yeah, definitely.
Bring a product mindset to regulation and legal setting. This has been great, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks.
Really enjoyed talking about something different for product management.
Yeah.
Had good fun?
Yeah.
Time's flown as well.
Nice,
It's been awesome. Let's set up another recording.
Yeah, definitely.
This has been great. Thank you to yourself for joining me here in Sydney. Thank you to everyone watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast. And a special thank you to Brainmates as the location sponsor here in Sydney for me recording all of these recordings. I look forward to sharing another guest with you all very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.